Alright, YouTube, we are on the Slovenian train from Selnica, Slovenia to Vienna, Austria, via the village of Modling, outside of Hinterbrühl, known for the famous Sea Grotto, and also happens to be the resident of multiple Austrian national three-cushion billiard champion, Mr. Andreas Effler. So, I figure we're going to talk a little bit of politics for a bit, since I have nothing else to do for 4 or 5 hours. That would be the Main River. So I've been in Europe now, 2 weeks, and I'm watching things blow up back home. And I guess I want to start with what happened with Milo at Berkeley, once formerly the home of the free speech movement, now the home of the fascist anti-free speech movement. And analogously, I'd like to cite my cousin Adam. Unique of all my friends, pro or con for Trump, he is the only one throughout this entire campaign that I went on, dating back to January of 2016, even before I was on board. I just hadn't traveled to New Hampshire yet. He's the only one who never really weighed in on his politics. He's from Wyoming Valley in Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. My family are lifelong Democrats. His mother was a staunch Democrat, rest her soul, was a staunch Democrat, and I think Adam, most of his life, thought he was a Democrat, but I think the... Yeah, well, that's not going to help me. He is starting to shake off the doldrums that is liberalism, and as he's become a successful engineer, he started to realize that maybe he might be a conservative. I don't know. But after I got home from the inauguration and I had my life threatened multiple times by a thug with because I was wearing a Trump hat, he came home, sat down in my basement, and he said that the Women's March and the burning of the limousines and the smashing of the Starbucks, did these people realize that they were just daily bringing people over to against their side, over to the side of Trump. And without coming out and saying it so much, if I'm a betting man, I guarantee you he's going to vote for Trump in 2020. So the upshot of the protests in D.C., I know it cost him 1 vote. Analogously, now back to Milo. Now, I was on the phone with my mother. She's 72 years old. She's voted Democrat her entire life. I have the feeling she probably still pulled the lever for Clinton, but I want to think she voted for Trump. We don't talk about it. Who knows? I think she might have voted Trump, but she knows who Milo Yiannopoulos is now, and that to me is earth-shattering, because before Berkeley, if I would have told my mother that the face of the free speech movement was a half-Jewish gay immigrant with a black boyfriend, it's inconceivable. So the rioters in Berkeley, I'm not sure what it is they thought they were accomplishing other than squashing free speech and being the true fascists. What the upshot was of that was you have now awoken an entire generation to who Milo Yiannopoulos was, who never would have known who that guy was. My mother gets all her news from the television set and does not YouTube whatsoever. And so she had no idea who Milo was, and I started telling her a little bit about him. And yes, he fat shames feminists. If you take a look at a lot of the pictures of the Triggly-Puff feminist movement, they're disgusting to look at. I'm sorry for saying it. Pardon me for being a Western European male who can appreciate the female form. And I believe there's a reason why beauty is appreciated, and there's a reason why we want to breed with beauty, not with ugly. And I'm not saying that's a neat building. I'm not saying that ugly women are automatically feminists, nor am I saying that beautiful women are automatically anti-feminists. There is certainly some crossover, but if you look at some of the faces of the feminist movement that are the most vocal ones, they blur the lines between male and female. They look, there's an ancient train. They look, very much. They look very much angry all the time. They wear this radical clothing, these bizarre styles of dress and hair, and Milo calls them out on it. So after Berkeley, you tried to shut a guy down. The Center of Free Speech tried to shut down free speech, and I don't know if anyone here understands or even cares to point out the fallacy of that. What you've really accomplished is you gave the guy a national platform, and now people like my mother are defending Milo Yiannopoulos. So Milo, my hat's off to you. I met you in Cleveland. You're dressed like a dandy. You got a $4,000 diamond bracelet. You got intentionally ripped $800 designer jeans. You are a dandy. However, I must say that I've heard you speak several times on YouTube. I followed the Dangerous Faggot campus tour, and I think you're right on point. So the vitriol displayed in Berkeley, I believe, is indicative of what happens when the left, when someone breaks, if you will, with the left. They save their greatest vitriol, if you will, for the Diamond and Silks of the world, or the Milos of the world, the black people who come out for Trump, the gays who come out for Trump, the ones who they, because of their identity politics, they assume that everybody who is of a certain demographic is automatically supposed to vote for them. Like, what, you're black and you don't vote Democrat? What are you, an Uncle Tom? Or you're, you cannot possibly vote Trump if you're gay. Well, yeah, actually you can, because if you look at Trump's record with gays, in my opinion, him and Caitlyn, or Bruce Jenner, they squashed that North Carolina controversy. They were trying to trap Trump on one of the many thousands of traps they tried. And Trump's answer to that was to invite Caitlyn to pee in Trump Tower. Now, how did Caitlyn go from getting an ESPY for the Courage Award and being the darling of the trans movement to dropped off the face of the earth and no press? Oh, she's a freak and she's miserable and it's this, that, the other. Well, am I the only one that noticed that occurred round about the same time she peed in Trump Tower, and lo and behold, the North Carolina bathroom bill controversy just went away because you're not gonna pin Trump on it, So the vitriol that they spewed to Caitlyn after she peed in Trump Tower was, oh, Caitlyn's depressed, Caitlyn's sick in the head. She's gone. She's no longer the darling of the trans movement, if you will. In fact, she's been thrown under the rug. Example number 2, Kanye West. I'm not a big fan of Kanye. I'm not a big fan of Lady Gaga. In fact, Lady Gaga wears meat on garbage trucks and is generally disgusting. Born this way, born that way, whatever. We'll get to her in a minute. Back to Kanye. Kanye, when he said he wanted to run for president in 2020, I thought that was absolute kookery. But when I've listened to the clip of him at the concert, and he is calling out, if you will, the Hollywood entertainment industry, the vapid, vacuous, garbage popular culture that we have today, where people venerate their butts more than you actually used to have talent to make a song. If you were a child prodigy musician, if you were a Donny or a Marie Osmond, or you had a career waiting for you as a musician or as an entertainer because you were actually talented. A June Carter, if you will, who was singing since she was 8 years old, and Johnny Cash, who was playing the guitar at a very, very early age and started singing when he was in the Army at age 17, 18. He got his way on what's called the meritocracy, So in the case of Kanye, I believe his handlers, who are infected as well, they whisked him away and sent him to a psycho tank, and they did everything they can. But Kanye's a freak. Kanye's having a nervous breakdown. Kanye's a mental case. No, actually, Kanye called you people out. Okay, so let's fast forward to the Super Bowl. Did anyone see the articles that were written anti-Lady Gaga, who was just a month ago, or just when she was standing on that trash truck, the sanitation truck in New York City outside of Trump Tower, not to point out the poetic irony in that that's an odd pile of scrap metal, not to point out the piles of scrap metal, not to point out the irony of her standing on a trash truck. everyone was thinking she was going to use the Super Bowl and pull her kind of black militant power Beyonce speech that we saw last year, which in my opinion was a call to war. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization, and when I come home, I am fully on board with anybody that wants to help me form a militia to squash these people. And you talk about silence and free speech. Well, you have a right to speak, but I have a right to bash you in the skull. So Kanye, he's a freak show. He's an idiot. He's a moron. Lady Gaga failed to capitalize on the platform, failed to take her national opportunity. Yes, her show was very innocuous. Very, as they said, I've seen 10 different citations of the word safe. Well, maybe, just maybe, Lady Gaga's not an idiot that I thought she was. Maybe she realized that if she came out and started bashing Trump at the Super Bowl, that she was going to alienate basically half of her fan base. I don't know that a ton of conservatives listen to Lady Gaga. I don't know that a ton of conservatives listen to Kanye West. But there are certainly people who are fans of those artists who probably voted Trump. We know that, for example, blacks, Hispanics, and gays all voted for Trump in much, much higher numbers than they did for Romney. In fact, I'm willing to bet that in many cases, North Carolina, for example, the black vote certainly helped propel Trump over the top, just like the Hispanic vote helped Trump over the top in Florida and Arizona. So the upshot here from a European observer's standpoint is that we're blowing up before our eyes. It's an embarrassment to be watching this, if you will, from a fishbowl perspective, as if I'm sort of out of the United States now and I'm in Slovenia on my way to Austria, and I'm watching this happen, if you will, as a detached observer. I'm not really there, part of the process. I'm not at BWI swinging my cue stick around to try to break free of the crowd protesting my exit from the airport, which God, I hope that doesn't happen on February 24th. And I hope that my Hayfields members that are listening to this don't think ill of me when I say quite freely that if you block my exit from BWI, this particular deplorable is prepared to fight back. And I think truly that my Hayfields members respect and admire what I did for Trump, even the ones that didn't like him. They have to begrudgingly respect my opinion, and based on the number of congratulatory texts and emails that I got from the aristocracy, many of them are proud of me, and I for one am proud to have played the role that I played. So those of you that are back home attempting to silence free speech or attempting to say that Trump is anti-LGBTQA alphabet soup of the week, you're wrong. You're wrong. Trump staunchly attacked the Pulse nightclub shooter. Trump squashed the bathroom bill controversy. Trump sued Mar-a-Lago to allow Jews, Hispanics, and blacks to join his country club, and then when he won that lawsuit, he forced the entire city of Tampa to enact legislation to allow their other country clubs to follow suit. But you can't even try to present that argument to a leftist because the smoke starts coming out of the ears and the foam starts coming out of the mouth. So let's see what happens when I get home, because I have some points that have made that I've got a European perspective on this, if you will, that is anti-communist, anti-socialist. My host is 38 years old. He was 2 years old when Tito died, and Yugoslavia still existed for about another 10 years. So he was probably 11 or 12 when Yugoslavia broke up. He doesn't remember Tito, obviously, but he certainly remembers growing up in communist Yugoslavia. And I can tell you that his memories of it are not fond. It was messed up. And he said this, and these people are not pro-Trump. These people think Trump is a Twitter cowboy, and that they're not really sure how to take him yet. They're with a grain of salt at the moment, and they're going to wait and see. But Tomas set it up quite well, that in Yugoslavia, yes, everybody had a job, and you had to show up at the factory for 8 hours, but many people would just show up at the factory and just not work, and most of the work was done by a small percentage of the people, the ones that actually had, if you will, a Western European work ethic. And that's everywhere. I can remember my mother, when she retired as a nurse, was making very good money. She's probably pulling a bit down. I don't know. I don't really know what she was making, but I bet you it was about $100,000. And I can remember her time and again saying that the young nurses, particularly those of a certain demographic, would get out of college and expect to be making the same thing that my mother was making, or that Paige, what's her name, Paige McConnell, was making, or her friend Sharon were making. And these people had been nurses since the 60s. You know, they earned their way up to a $45 an hour rate, $50 an hour rate. You don't get to make that coming out of college. You ought to be proud that you're making 16, 18, 22. So this Yugoslavian concept of communism is good, socialism is good, is infecting the youth, the EU infected youth. And as I was at the Obscena, the municipal office of Selnica on Sunday, waiting for my host to get out of class, I ran into a youth who was born in 1998. You know, and I asked him, I was like, "What's it like here, man? What's the deal? You know, post Tito?" And he's like, "Well, you know, communism had a lot of good things, and everyone had a job, and everyone was equal." And I said, "How old are you?" And he said, "I was born in 98. I said, "You didn't live in Yugoslavia, did you?" And he said, No. And I just left it at that. I left the kid to draw his own conclusion. But the conclusion is obvious, that the young ones that didn't live under Tito, or didn't live under the post-Tito 10-year Yugoslavia, they have no idea what it was like to live in a socialist mentality. You talk to Tomas, my host, and he'll tell you straight up, socialism does not elevate people up. It brings everybody to the level of down. The communist society mandated everybody worked. Yes, everyone had to have a job. You're part of the collective. But that doesn't mean you had to work. You just had to show up for 8 hours, and you couldn't get fired. So you had 20% of the people doing 90% of the work, and 80% of the people just kind of slacking their way through their 8-hour shifts, smoking cigarettes, drinking alcohol constantly on the job, and generally sponging off the system because they had figured it out that they didn't have to. And so Slovenia is, if you talk to someone in their late 30s, is still very much held back by that mindset, this romanticized, fantasized, glorified vision of socialism and communism. We know what socialism and communism leads to. It leads to nothing but misery and death, and the destruction of the way of life of the country that actually built itself up to be a great country. Witness post-communist Russia, what they had to go through. Look at the current conditions in China. You want to move to China, you be my guest. Go to North Korea. Go to Albania. Don't tell me Castro was a good man. Don't tell me Cuba was a great place to live because you had a good medical system. Yeah, you had good hospitals. Yes, you had good doctors. Yeah, you had death, and you had gangs of purge gangs going through the streets. So it's a fallacy to say that socialism or communism is good. Yes, would I like to see medicine socialized in the United States? Absolutely. Is it wrong that insurance executives are pulling down 7-figure salaries on the backs of me and you and the working man? Absolutely. There are aspects of society, particularly American society, that would benefit from socialization, from the government taking it over. But I don't want the government legislating my morality. I don't want the government legislating my right to work or my right to advance. Affirmative action only keeps blacks down. If everyone's equal, why do you need affirmative action? Why do I have to be said, hey, you have to admit so many people into this college, or so many people of this minority into this job? If it's a meritocracy, I want to hire the best people I can hire. That's why sports doesn't have affirmative action. I don't care what the color of your skin is. I want the guy next to me in the foxhole to be able to push that football or shoot that basketball or hit that baseball to the best of his ability to pack the seats. And if I'm an owner of a sports team, I don't care if you're orange or green. If you're better than the next guy, you get the starting spot. It's one of the last meritocracies left in the United States. We're getting to that point where NASA is now becoming infected with it, and NASA should be a meritocracy because lives are at stake. I want the guy who locks the door to say, yep, okay, Carp, you're good to blast off in the rocket. I want that guy to have got his job on a meritocracy, not because someone said I had to hire a certain percentage of so-and-so to get there. Affirmative action is akin to socialism. It brings only misery and death. And this shut down the free speech movement, this alt-left, radical left movement, that want to socialize the United States. You are only daily flocking people to your cause. And take the ball and run further left. I will be waiting at the end zone, chanting victory, just like I did at the inauguration. Carp out.